Hello, Hope Church, and welcome to this devotion for October, which I cannot quite believe that I'm actually saying that we're doing the devotion for October, but the evidence is clear. I got the lights on, even though it's the morning here. The nights are drawing in, the leaves are starting to turn colour, and the atmosphere is starting to become quite autumnal instead of the heat that we've been experiencing over the course of the summer. So perhaps as you sit down to listen to this devotion, perhaps you want to be grabbing a cup of hot Bovril or a Horlicks to accompany it. And what I want to share with you today is just a little thought, and it's a little thought around the idea of prophecy. I remember so many times when I was younger and you're looking for a word from the Lord, you're not quite sure where to turn, and you want God to speak into a situation, and sometimes in those moments God is quiet. God doesn't appear to be speaking, and we're left like the psalmist sometimes saying, God, where are you? Why are you not speaking into my context and my situation? And I came to learn during that time that sometimes, actually silence is better than actually receiving the word of the Lord. And if we look at the scriptures this morning, the famous passage from Joshua 1, where God speaks into Joshua. Joshua's looking for a word, and this is what God says. God says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. What a wonderful, wonderful word that is from the Lord. Except let's pause for a moment. Be strong and courageous. Now, if God is telling you to be strong and courageous, there's a reason for it. There's a moment that's coming when you're going to be in a position where being strong and courageous is not going to be your first thought. That is not going to be the first response that you have to that situation. Sometimes the prophetic word comes in to sustain us during the difficult moments, where God is saying to Joshua, hey, be strong, be courageous, because a situation is coming where you're going to need to be strong, where you're going to need to be courageous, where you can't back down as a leader, where you can't turn the other way. And so that is what we want to be thinking about today. Being strong and being very courageous. You see, what happens with this, and we know the story well, that Joshua is now going to send out spies. He's going to send out spies into the same land that 12 spies, including Joshua himself, was sent previously. When they had gone into the land, they had seen that the land was good, but they'd seen that the land was filled with giants. And the guys had basically come back with a report, all bar two of them, that there's no chance. Don't even bother attempting to take this land. The giants are too big. Failure is guaranteed. And yet Joshua then learns from that. Joshua learns that because 10 had brought back a negative report, and that negative report had filtered throughout the whole camp, he's very clever this time, and he says, right, we're going to send out some spies, but this time do it on the quiet. This time we're not going to say too much. We're not going to bring a big fanfare. We're going to send out spies into the land super quietly. And I love this, because when you get to Joshua 2, the very next verse, as Joshua has sent these spies quietly out into the land, the very next verse says that the king of Jericho was aware of it. It was about as much a secret as Ronald McDonald's favourite burger, as everybody seemed to know, even though Joshua was doing it quietly. But this is the thing, when we're stepping out, when we're making big decisions, when as a church or as an individual you are trying to take new land, the enemy will be aware of it. The enemy will attempt to make things difficult, will attempt to blockade what is actually happening. And so don't be surprised if the news gets out of what's happening. Don't be surprised if stumbling blocks are put in your way. But here's the main thought of the devotion this morning, that when God has called us to do something, however big, however terrifying it might be, he has already been working on that situation. He has already put people in positions. He has already orchestrated things so that his will come to pass. And that, I think, is an incredibly encouraging thought. This is what happened with Joshua. There is somebody, and it's not necessarily somebody you'd expect, because in Joshua's case, it's not a king, it's not somebody with riches or with wealth, it's a prostitute who happens to be living in the walls of the city, who is able to get, because of her strategic position, is able to get the spies into the city and out of the city unseen. Somebody who everybody else would reject, used by God, because she wasn't a Jew, she wasn't somebody who's supposed to be following and obeying all the laws. No, but here is somebody who was assigned by God to help the Jews and to help them get into the city and out and to spy out the land. And we know that later she became part of the genealogy of Jesus, but her name, Rahab, but positioned by God in the walls of the city in order to fulfill the purposes of God. And that is what I want to encourage us with today. Whatever the situation is, whether it's the church and we're looking at our context and what is God saying to us at this time as we step into the community, as we're in a space we might be a little bit less comfortable with, whether it's you with your own personal situations, maybe difficult things have happened in recent times, or maybe you've got a big event coming up that scares you, or something that's on the horizon that you'd rather not be going into. Well, today and across